So first question up for this week's coaching call is about not being able to handle the volume of work planned for the deadlift, but all the other lifts are fine. So how would you manage that? What changes would you make to it? In a situation like that where you're in guided programming, so the amount of changes that we can make to the program itself are a bit limited. You don't necessarily want to change training groups because it's working good for 2 of the 3 lifts, but what can you do to change the program for that 3rd lift to hopefully get it to respond a bit better? And in this case, we're talking about how would you reduce the volume in your deadlift training. Probably the main way that you would do that is to eliminate either the deadlift 1 or deadlift 2 slots, either your main deadlift, your competition style deadlift, or your assistance deadlift slot, assuming of course that you're completing the full program and training 4 times a week. So if you are in a position where you're doing that and you've got these 2 deadlift slots in there, my first recommendation would be to eliminate one of them, probably the assistance slot. If you're in more of an off-season type of mode, you're in more of a volume-focused developmental style part of your training year, you could eliminate the competition lift, and as long as you're doing that assistance deadlift movement, it's not going to be terrible or anything like that. You'll most likely be just fine. So that would be probably the first thing, and that's going to knock your overall stress in the deadlift down pretty substantially. If that's too much, if it's too much of a reduction, then instead of knocking out, either the comp deadlift or the assistance deadlift, I would take out the supplemental deadlift slot instead. Something like the good mornings or the Romanian deadlifts or something along those lines. That's typically how it's going to show up in your program. It's going to be trained for higher reps. That can go. Kind of the last option, and I would only use this if you're quite comfortable manipulating your own training, it would be to reduce the volume of each slot by at least 1 working set, and that's gonna reduce the overall stress level as well. So there you go. There's really 3 options for how to get that stress level down. And it depends on how much of a stress reduction you need. If you need a substantial stress reduction, I'd go with option 1, which was reducing the competition or assistance deadlift slot. If you need less of a reduction, then instead of dropping one of those other slots, you would drop the supplemental slot instead. And then the last option is for those who are most comfortable modifying their training, and that would be just to reduce the volume in each slot individually.